Hello, and welcome back to episode 10 of Take Charge of the Classroom, a web series designed to disrupt outdated behavior management models and help you create the classroom culture of your dreams. In this episode, we are looking at action and how your attention is your superpower. We've already discussed previously how your attention it can be used to reinforce the behaviors that you want and also be used, if withheld, to kind of eliminate the behaviors that you're not wanting to see. So we're going to come back, we're going to revisit this particular idea today, but we're going to look at it through the lens of what are the students doing and what does that actually mean in order to use differential social attention so that you are giving your social approval only to those actions that meet your expectations. And it's going to be a difficult concept for many teachers. I know it is for me when I first read about it and learned about it to really understand because it goes against everything that we think. We are typically very short-term focused in education, meaning when we're looking at behavior, when we're looking at our activity, at our lesson, we're typically looking at what's happening now and what's coming up next. And so when misbehavior crops up, typically our immediate action is to just fuss at the kids, to get onto the kids, threat, punishment, reward, whatever it is that we're doing when we see a student talking out, making rude noises, not following expectations, our instinct is to jump in and address it immediately. And some administrators probably would want us to do it that way. If we see a problem, they want us to handle it. The problem lies at every time that we are doing that, we are reinforcing the wrong thing. We are reinforcing that negative behavior because we are giving it our attention. So what does this mean short-term versus long-term? When a kid is acting out and we fuss at them, and remember that's my term for somewhere in between punishment and reward, we just end up kind of fussing at kids, right? So we'll tell the kid to, stop talking, raise their hand, whatever they're doing that's not following our expectations, or possibly is attention-seeking behavior. We fuss at the kids. We will probably get compliance. That's the best we can hope for. But that's a short-term win. Because what happens 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, they do it again. Once you start down that road of fussing at students, it's a carousel. You can never get off. You do it again and again and again, and it's because we're thinking short-term rather than long-term. We are actually reinforcing the behaviors that we want to see eliminated. Those are the ones we're giving our attention. And when we acknowledge it, even though the students might not necessarily like the negative attention, right, it's your attention, and they are getting what they're wanting because remember, all behavior is communication. And for a lot of students, what they're communicating subconsciously is see me, acknowledge me, know that I am here. And so you getting onto the kids is actually just going to reinforce the fact that it's going to happen later, again and again and again. Your students are training you to focus on the wrong things, and you are acknowledging that, and you are giving into that, and then the students are basically letting you know, if I'm going to act a certain way, you are going to respond, and I'm going to get the attention that I need. And that is a short-term win. Even if you don't necessarily use words, most teachers have developed the look. And I know I used it a lot in the classroom. Sometimes you don't even have to say anything. As long as you can get eye contact, you can communicate an entire paragraph with just a scowl or with just the furrowing of your eyebrows. But even that is attention. And we have to remember this. Every time that we give attention to negative behavior, we are reinforcing it. And please know, I am talking about attention-seeking behavior. I'm talking about minor behavior. If a child is punching another child, we don't ignore that. That's a safety issue. We need to jump in immediately, and that is dealt with differently. But it's the little, tiny, ticky-tack behaviors that just drive us nuts every single day. When the students are acting out and we are giving it our attention, we are reinforcing it. So we need to starve it, we need to deny it, we need to let it wither and die. So ignoring negative behavior is only part of it. Because if that's all we do, then our class is going to turn into a zoo. Step 1 is probably the hardest. Ignore negative behavior. Only focus on positive behavior. Be prepared. There will most likely be an extinction burst. If that kid is really needing your attention, they're going to keep upping their ante until they get it. And they're going to go a little bit higher. And it's a game of chicken. It really is. Who's going to flinch first? Are they going to meet your expectations? Or are you going to finally just snap and just send the kid out of the office, and then they will get that fix that they need? So watch out for that extinction burst. And instead of simply ignoring negative behavior, which is only part of focusing on the correct actions, and instead of merely ignoring negative actions, this is what we do. Here's the second part. We focus our attention and our social approval on those student actions that are meeting our expectations. There are two different things we need to be looking for: initiation behaviors and continuation behaviors. So initiation behaviors. We need to notice when students, when they begin appropriate tasks. And think of yourself as a play-by-play commentator. If you've ever watched sports on TV, you're not just watching a silent TV. There are several people in the booth, but usually there's one voice that you hear all the time. And they're the play-by-play announcer. And they are just verbally describing what they're seeing on the screen. They're not giving any judgments. They're just describing it. And that's what we need to be like in the classroom, at a rate of probably 2 or 3 noticings per minute. It's going to be a lot of talking at the beginning, but you're training your kids to, when they get their expectations aligned with your expectations, that's when you're going to notice them. And they will learn real quick that if they want your attention, they need to initiate the correct behaviors. So it could be getting out their papers, starting on their homework, putting their backpacks away, moving from one spot in the classroom to the other, getting started on a group task. We want to notice students, and we're simply describing what they're doing. So if we've got a group of students that are, we just finished our direct instruction and they're getting started on the group work, we might notice them. We might say, Hilda, Monica, and Yvette have already started on their group task. They have their name on their paper and they're getting out their books. I'm not judging their actions as good or bad. I'm simply describing them or noticing them. Remember, when we judge, we shift everyone into that emotional state, and that's not what we want, because we're not there to judge. We're there to describe the actions that we see. So by me noticing those 3 girls in that situation, what that's doing is that's letting the class know this is what you should be doing. That's making them feel a little bit better because they got my attention. And that's also giving the few students that might not have been listening a heads up as, oh, this is what you should be doing. So you're simply noticing students when they begin the appropriate tasks. Putting pencils away, pushing in the chair, getting out your backpack, whatever it is, you notice it, do 2 or 3 instances at that beginning, and then you're off and running. The other part of it is the continuation side. And this is honestly where a lot of students have difficulties, not so much starting the action, it's continuing it, right? It's 5 minutes in, we start getting all kinds of crazy behavior. So we also need to notice students when they continue the appropriate tasks. So 5 minutes in, we might notice a few students, different ones, as long as they're meeting the expectations, they're continuing to work, right? They're still working hard. They're showing their work. You're putting out just those little descriptions into the air. You're naming the students and what they're doing, and without necessarily saying this is what you should be doing, by simply giving it your attention, you are describing for students what they should be doing. And if they're not doing it, you're not calling them out. That's the difference here, is instead of fussing at the kids that are not working, the kids that are talking, that are not necessarily doing their job in the groups, you're not calling them out, you're not making them feel shame, and you're definitely not giving them your attention. You're just ignoring them until they meet your expectations. And it will not take long for students to realize, oh wow, this teacher's not playing around. He or she is only going to give attention to the students that are meeting expectations. And if you want, it's perfectly fine to sit down and talk to the kids about this. Say, this is how you're going to get my attention. I'm going to notice you when you're initiating or continuing the correct behaviors. And if you're doing the wrong thing, I'm not going to give you my attention. So if you want to be seen and noticed by me, you need to make sure you're meeting the expectations we've set out in the classroom. If they're older students, there's nothing wrong with just putting that out there. So some examples might be working with a partner, following directions, completing an independent assignment, right? How many times do our lessons start well, but by the end of class, the kids are climbing all over the place because they can initiate the behavior, but they can't continue the behavior. And it's that continuation is when most students, they start to fall back on the expectations and misbehavior begins to emerge, and we typically erupt as teachers because they fail to continue a task. But if we remember that our attention is our superpower and that we direct it only at the students that are meeting the expectations and their actions, the initiations and the continuations are meeting our expectations, we will let the students know, and we will continually and verbally put out there into our classroom culture that my attention is reserved for students that meet expectations. And the second that misbehaving student does anything close to resembling the expectations, you better believe we're going to notice that student for even that little small thing that they did. And that's going to want them to do more and more and more. There is no satiation effect for this type of verbal praise. You can do it again and again and again. It's so much better than fussing and the rewards and the punishments that we use. And so thank you for listening to this. As always, you can find out more about the book. You can find out more about all the different episodes in this web series on my website, aarondaffern.com/takecharge. You can email me or you can follow me at Aaron Daffern.